Kamu lihat aku nggak sih naik sepeda?
Sebentar.
Ngapain sih kamu?
Si Rehan.
Hah?
Si Rehan ini.
Aku mau makan dulu. Nah, kalau keluar kita ngulang dari awal.
Enggak. Dari checkpoint. Kau makan dulu.
Iya. Disuruh makan.
Ya udah makan dulu ya.
Sedang dari Kak makan.
Lihat mana sih nih? Oh jauh, jadi dikasih sepeda ya. Itu kamu checkpoint berapa?
Aku checkpoint 3. Aku checkpoint 3.
To third place, the Frenchman there in fourth, but around the outside, oh, how
Aku udah sampai di checkpoint 4.
Bentar.
Well, Alex Marquez said yesterday he wasn't aggressive enough at the start of the sprint. He made it into turn 1, and as he was yesterday, he's second at the end of the first sector.
big moment on the front end there for Bez as he squeezed a handful of brake going into turn 4. A new front tyre and a full fuel tank. You could clearly see how he was lap 1.
And we asked the question whether Mir physically could last the distance. He didn't last. Yeah, because Mir started 12, Zarco started much further back in 19th.
On the outside, oh, how strong was Mark going through turn 3? Not close enough though to attack Bez into 4.
Well, Alex Marquez said yesterday he wasn't aggressive enough at the start of the sprint. You may argue it was the same situation again there. Mark just rode clean around the outside of him into turn 1. And as he was yesterday, he's second at the end of the first sector.
Big moment on the front end there for Bez as he squeezed a handful of brake going into turn 4. A new front tyre and a full fuel tank. You could clearly see how he was pushing. Johan Zarco's Grand Prix has ended in disaster. So too Dwamir. 2 Hondas out then at turn 4 on lap 1.
And we asked the question whether Mir physically could last the distance. He didn't last 5 corners before he went down in this Grand Prix. I'd love to know how they ended up together, because Mir started 12, Zarco started much further back in 19th place.
A disastrous way to start Mir's 50th Grand Prix for Honda. That looks like being his 29th DNF in 50. We'll try and find out exactly what was the cause of the 2 Hondas going down at turn 4 as Mark closes right onto the rear tyre. Bezzecchi into 14, safely through 15 on this occasion, goes a 9-3. Of course, it was right there yesterday, having just taken the lead in the sprint where he crashed.
So not a lot of changes up the grid then. Morbidelli up into 5th place, or 5th where he started. The big loser is Marino, really. Everyone between those have moved up one. So you've got Gigi 6th, the Costa 7th, Bagnaia 8th, then Aldeguer, and Marini, who started 6th, has dropped 4 places.
Bastianini's been strong on the first lap, 20th to 13th for a rider who's been on the podium here in the last 5 MotoGP battles. Right here last year at turn 4, he made the killer move on Martin to take what was a pretty controversial victory in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Looking back then to Mark, this is where he passed Bez for that short-lived experience in the front of the sprint yesterday, going through turn 6. Bez a little bit wiser to that move on this occasion as they now drop down into turn 8. That's Acosta getting on the inside of the Gian Antonio. The KTM star working his way towards the podium battle, up now into 6th.
Yeah, he's now up 3 places from where he started. Bagnaia is just behind that battle. Here is Jorge Martin then, who's in 11th place, and clearly from the ergonomic checks they were doing on that Aprilia, it's not a bike that he's as comfortable or familiar with as he is on his first bike. So due to the incorrect start procedure, he'll be coming through the line penalty loop twice in the next 5 laps or so.
Not looking the most stable of motorcycles at the moment underneath Bezzecchi is that factory Aprilia. Keeps a tight defensive line though going through Caro corner. How close is that? Brilliant onboard footage here. On board with the race leader Bezzecchi on the 72. They'll tip it letter now into turn 16. The Mazzano corner. There's going to be nothing, is there, between Bez and Mark as we start lap 3.
Much like we saw yesterday, top 3 already breaking clear of Quartararo in 3rd place. Mid-31s for the top 3. Quartararo is in the very high 31s at 31.9. Alex Rins and Augusto Fernandez on their Yamahas have also got double long lap penalties. So did they jump the start?
Yeah, it's been a rough start for 2 Hondas in this Grand Prix, and a rough start now for 2 Yamahas as well. Marco, I thought he was going to try and line up that move once again, going through turn 6, just trying to use that element of surprise on Bezzecchi. Bezzecchi one moment must have thought, you know what, he's going to try and come through here. Alex now closing up on Mark into 2nd place. Yeah, jump starts for both Rins and Augusto Fernandez, so not the greatest of Grand Prix debuts for Yamaha's new V4 powered Wiser RM1.
Yeah, it's so easy when one rider triggers it and jumps the start, he can trigger a reaction from someone behind him. Rins was a row ahead of Fernandez on the grid, so 2 Yamahas with double on lap penalties in addition to Jorge Martin's Aprilia. So top 3 then already, the thick end of a 2nd clear of Quartararo, who's got Morbidelli and the fast starting Acosta now right behind him.
Yeah, and Alex has really started to latch himself onto the rear tyre of Mark. More yellow flags out there now in sector 3. Agura has gone down. We believe the only rider that started this Grand Prix on that soft rear tyre. Well, it hasn't worked out at all, has it, for Agura? Sector 3. Could be a fast old crash that for the Trackhouse Aprilia. Well, let's hope Agura's going to be okay. Of course, with one of the biggest races of his life coming over in 2 weeks as he prepares to make his debut in MotoGP in front of his home crowd in Japan. Marco Bezzecchi has got a real fast early rhythm going here for Aprilia. A 1:31.440 on that 3rd lap of 27, fastest of the Grand Prix so far. Best half a second clear of Mark.
Extraordinary pace early on from Bezzecchi, because he did bolt very early in the sprint yesterday, and then Marquez after 4 or 5 laps closed him back down again. So of course there'll be many here getting very excited to see Marco Bezzecchi out of the way at the front of the race, but don't expect him to shake off Marc Marquez that easily.
Yeah, and as we heard yesterday, as Acosta now, well, he's already made that move on one VR46 Ducati in this Grand Prix. He's trying to make it through on another, and he has. This has been impressive by Acosta. Made light work then of both the Gian Antonio and Morbidelli on the Ducatis ahead of him going into turn 8. Nothing wrong with the stopping performance of the KTM into Quercia corner. So Acosta then now up into 5th.
Yeah, Quartararo between him and the leading 3 are about a second of the road. More yellow flags again in the 3rd sector. It's someone behind us as we're on above with Acosta. You can see the light panel flashing there as it goes from yellow to green once they are clear of any kind of hazard. We're not at the moment seeing any rider dropping down the order, unless it is still the clearing away of the Agura crash from a lap ago.
Yeah, I think it is all related to the Agura incident. And we haven't seen rider or machine, have we, after that Agura crash? Let's hope that the Japanese rider is okay. Bezzecchi then still making the early running here in Mazzano, doing a top job at the moment in front of his home crowd of keeping Mark at arm's length, still half a second between the two. What's going through the mind of Mark right now? Because yesterday Alex got a sense, he said it to the media, this is not us surmising, Alex said he felt that Mark was playing with himself and with Bez in that sprint yesterday. So we do just wonder what Mark's sort of tactics are early on here. We know that this is the phase of the Grand Prix where Mark, I'm not going to say he's under strength or weak, because that's a stretch, but we know how good he is at the end of Grand Prix into the final part. Acosta loves that move, doesn't he? Although he's a little bit hot this time around on Quartararo, but Acosta's been so good on the brakes into turn 8.
Maverick Vinales has gone down. We saw the yellow flags coming out again. Hopefully he's not hurt himself again, because he's just on the recovery from his dislocated shoulder back at the Saxa ring. So we've now lost a KTM and Aprilia, and of course a Honda. John Zarco did remount and rejoin the race, but he's way down and back in the field.
Tough day, hasn't it, for some of the Spanish talents so far. Vinales crashing, Rins and Fernandez with double long laps, Martin with a double long lap after a mechanical on the sighting lap, Joan Mir crashing out on lap 1. Bit of a sorry day for some of the Spaniards here in San Marino. On board with Acosta, he's already had one look at Quartararo on the brakes into turn 8. Shows how late Quartararo is on the brakes on that factory Yamaha. Acosta could not make that move stick. moves that he had made successfully earlier in the Grand Prix on the Gian Antonio and Morbidelli.
It's at this stage of the race where Quartararo might be most vulnerable. Generally, as the fuel load burns down, that Yamaha does get stronger and stronger. So Quartararo can limit the damage in these early stages. He's in good shape to stay around in that top 6. He did set his personal best lap last time around on a 1:31.9. He's not got a pace of the top 3, but at the moment he's just about keeping Acosta at arm's length, although we know Acosta's preferred passing point is coming up into Quercia.
Yeah, we know that there's no contest in terms of top speed between the KTM and the Yamaha. Quartararo tries desperately to tough it out in the braking zone, as Acosta this time around made it through cleanly. He has. So Acosta's favourite move. That's now the Gian Antonio, Morbidelli and Quartararo, who he's picked off going through turn 8. He's on a slightly wider line than going through 10. Mark's warming up here though, isn't he? 1:31.559 on the last lap. It was about a tenth quicker than Bezzecchi ahead of him. He's dragging Alex along with him as well. Bez, Mark and Alex, your runaway top 3.
Yeah, 4 tenths between Bezzecchi and Mark, 4 tenths between Mark and Alex through the first sector of this lap. Of course, you don't want to be too close to the back of another rider to allow that front tyre to get awash with hot air. The pressure can go up, so Marc Marquez potentially just happy to keep himself a few bike lengths back from Bezzecchi while he waits for the moment to attack.
Yesterday was the first sprint all season that Mark did not lead over the line at his single lap. Of course, he was briefly at the front of the sprint before he bailed off at turn 15 and with a rather high-speed crash. Further back, this is the battle between Quartararo and Morbidelli. That's a battle at the moment for 5th place, with Acosta now up into 4th. The 4th position that Acosta's been very familiar with so far in 2025. 4th in Le Mans, Aragon, Assen, Austria, and most recently in Catalonia. He's kind of the best of the rest, isn't he, really, behind Bez, Mark and Alex, who clearly have emerged over the last 6 or 7 Grand Prix as the sort of the top 3, the 3 to watch.
And Acosta could still get himself into that battle for 3rd in the World Championship himself yet, depending on what happens with the likes of Bezzecchi and Bagnaia. So here is this Quartararo Morbidelli battle for 5th and 6th. The Gian Antonio, who set his personal best last time around, is just behind them in 7th. Those double long lap penalties have all been served now, and the damage for Jorge Martin is he's now 13.5 seconds off the lead. He's in 16th, and he's 4.5 seconds even behind Jack Miller in the final points position.
Let's have a Bagnaia check. He's currently down in 8th place. Double world champion, sprint and Grand Prix winner here previously in front of his home fans in Misano. 8th right now for Pecco, and Bastianini up into 12th. He just set his personal best lap of the Grand Prix, a low 1:32. Over the line we go then, and that's successive fastest laps of the Grand Prix, PB laps for Mark, now down to a 1:31.5. 1:31.6 in the last 2 for Bez, 2 1:31.5s for Mark. It's just keeping that gap to just over a quarter of a second. Alex also able to keep himself in the 1:31.6s, but he's just in danger of getting cut adrift ever so slightly here in that battle for 3rd.
Yeah, Costa already scurrying up the road from Quartararo, 3/4 of a second already clear of the Yamaha. So Pedro Costa, he's not in danger at the moment of closing down the top 3, far from it. He's got a long way to go if he's going to think about a podium, but that 4th place looking pretty good.
He's
broken down, and we've seen his teammate Brad Binder with all kinds of technical problems this weekend. Now it's the other factory KTM that's been struck down.
Well, this has been an embarrassing weekend reliability-wise for the factory KTM team. Binder had 2 chains jump the sprocket earlier on the weekend. He was then ruled out yesterday of the sprint. We saw his reaction trackside. He was absolutely incensed. And Pedro Acosta, having done so much work to fight his way through on the Gian Antonio, Morbidelli and Quartararo, all of his hard work, and no uncertain terms does he let KTM know what he thinks of that one. Understandably so. You can understand why he's so frustrated. KTM, Lewis, have had an absolute nightmare. Where has their reliability gone here in Misano?
Binder had all sorts of problems with the chain falling off earlier on in the weekend, and then of course he had further problems when he had to pull out of the sprint yesterday. So at the moment now, with one KTM already in the hedge, with Maverick Vinales crashing out earlier on.
Chain.
That's a chain again.
Chain's
so Brad
off.
Binder's problem on Friday has been repeated. KTM coming unhinged this weekend.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. 3 chain issues for the same manufacturer across one weekend is just incredible. Well, as we mentioned Binder the other day, it's no chain, no gain, unfortunately. Only pain for Pedro Acosta. You could see how frustrated he was, and understandably so. He had to
probably known straight away too what had happened.
Exactly. He was flat out just keeping himself from giving that boot, putting a boot into that KTM, wasn't he there? He whacked the advertising hoarding on the outside. Oh, dear me. What an absolute shocker for KTM.
Yes, we saw that aero there. Sort of, well, one side of the front aero is hanging on, the other part there you see dropped off, so a little bit of damage now being carried by the race leader Marco Bezzecchi. But if you're wondering if that slowed him down, as that's Pecco Bagnaia now on the floor. Bagnaia, who was running in 7th place, promoted by Acosta's crash. The home Grand Prix to forget for Pecco.
2025 to forget for Bagnaia. Well, it just goes, it lurches from bad to worse, doesn't it? Trail braking, mid-corner, front end washing out on that factory Ducati. Do you know what? Very, very soon, Pecco Bagnaia can kiss goodbye to hopes of being 3rd in this year's World Championship. Bezzecchi then looking to recover more big points. He's under big pressure though right now, isn't he, from Mark?
It's a big if, but if Marco Bezzecchi wins this Grand Prix, he'll only be 3 points behind Pecco Bagnaia at the end of this Grand Prix. Of course, even the 20 points would take a serious bite out of that advantage. And of course, Costa not scoring either today. This could be a big day points-wise for the factory Aprilia star leading this race.
Board then with Mark, hard on the brakes into turn 8. Is this just Mark keeping a watching brief, just calculating when he feels like is the right time to strike on Bez? Bez is once again doing a wonderful job, isn't he, but at least being able to take the fight and show some resistance to Mark. Or penny for the thought of Pecco right now, as he once again is a frustrated spectator here in San Marino. Oh, the last 3 Grand Prix, when you think about Hungary, Catalonia, and now here in Misano, it's just been nothing short of a disaster with a capital D.
The attrition rate looks like it's rising, so the yellow flags are out again. We've already lost Mir Agura, Vinales Acosta and Pecco Bagnaia. Alex Rins has now gone down 2 out of 16th place, so we've now lost a Yamaha too. So they're dropping like flies a little bit out of this Grand Prix at the moment, but Marco Bezzecchi continues to lead it, and he and Marc Marquez continue to exchange 1:31.7s. They have now dropped Alex Marquez. He's over a second back.
Yeah, Alex can kiss goodbye at this stage to any hopes of back-to-back wins for the first time in his MotoGP career. He's struggling at the moment just to match this pace of Marco and Mark ahead of him. This is now through 5 and into 6, where we saw Mark make a real clinical move on Bez in the sprint yesterday. Not close enough though this time around. How many times have we seen this? Really, since the summer break return, it's been Bez versus Mark on so many occasions. Further down, Luca Marini and Miguel Oliveira have got themselves down to the low 132s. That's their best pace of the race so far. 8th for Marini. Oliveira is having a real strong ride, on course for what would be first top 10 on a Yamaha for the Portuguese rider, who could well be moving over to the BMW Factory World Superbike team next year, or he could be playing wingman for Marco Bezzecchi in 2026. He believed that he has been in talks about being Aprilia's test rider next season.
Bezzecchi is riding so well, isn't he, as Marc Marquez closes up mid-corner there through turn 14. He's had to pick up so much of the slack this year from an Aprilia point of view, of course, with all the injury problems for Jorge Martin in the first half of this season. His first season, of course, as a factory MotoGP rider, Marco Bezzecchi. Boy, has he ridden to that challenge.
Yeah, he really has. It was not easy at the start of the season. I think he even admitted himself he started to question whether he was up for the task of leading Aprilia's factory challenge. Well, he certainly has risen to that challenge in recent weeks, hasn't he, Bezzecchi? Mark, though, crawling all over his rear tyre. Just wonder when Mark will feel like the time is right. we know in the second half of this Grand Prix. Lorenzo touched upon it, speaking to Jack on the grid. Marc's forte is the sort of last third of the Grand Prix. So strong, isn't it? Oh, Bez has made a mistake. Bez has buckled then under this weight of pressure from Marc. So Marquez did not even have to make a move on Bez to take the lead here in Misano. That could be the crucial moment then of this Grand Prix. Down on the brakes into turn 8. It's an easy mistake to make. You're decelerating down from about 300 kilometres an hour in 6th gear, shoving off over 200 k's down into the 2nd gear, turn 8. Is this the pivotal moment of this San Marino Grand Prix?
Yeah, Bez knew that he'd gone in hot there, desperately trying to get it stopped, just keeps it on the racetrack, but Marc Marquez, I guess the pressure ultimately finally did tell on Marco Bezzecchi on lap 12 of 27, and is Marc Marquez going to stick the ball under his jumper and run away with it in the second half of this Grand Prix? Well, the yellow flags are coming out. I guess we can't take anything for granted given how quickly so many are dropping out of this Grand Prix, but Marc Marquez, Bastianini, more KTM calamity as he goes down out of 13th place, but surely Marc Marquez isn't going to make the same mistake in 2 consecutive days, is he?
You've got to be careful here and now as well, because we know that the FIA and MotoGP stewards have been clamping down on riders that have been disobeying orders from the marshals. He was having a bit of a wrestling match there, wasn't he, trying to get back into his home Grand Prix. Brad Binder at the moment, the only KTM rider that's not encountered any kind of issue, crash or technical wise, in this Grand Prix. Let's hope that's not the commentator's curse for the South African. Well, he doesn't need any presents, does he? He doesn't need any gifts, the number 93, Marc Marquez, but he's got one here in Misano. It'd be interesting to speak to Marc post-race, just what he was thinking when he felt like he was going to make the move on Bez, because it was coming, no question about it. It was going to happen at some point, but Marco Bezzecchi, with that mistake on that last lap, did a 132.4, cost him 0.6 of a second when he ran wide into 8.
We're riding on board then with the ultra impressive Fabio Quartararo on the Yamaha, still running 4th ahead of the VR46 Ducatis, but the rider to watch is behind this. Fermin Aldeguer is the fastest rider on track right now, and we're getting into that phase of the race where we generally look in his direction with his fast finishing Austrian Grand Prix when he came through to 2nd place. Aldeguer just did his personal best on a 31.7. He was a couple of tenths quicker than the trio up ahead of him, and of course with Bezzecchi's problem he was 7 tenths quicker than him, so Aldeguer motoring up towards the top 6.
Good ride once again, but by Aldeguer. Just to mention further down the field, there's been a fair amount of carnage that's ensued in front of him. Somkat Chantra has now moved into the point scoring places. That could be just his 2nd point scoring finish of what's been at times a very tough rookie season. Speaking of tough times, well, it doesn't really get any tougher than right now, does it, for Pecco Bagnaia? He said yesterday, after a woeful sprint where he crossed the line in 13th, I'm stuck, I'm in the midst, I'm living a nightmare, and there's no sign of that nightmare ending, is there, at all, for Bagnaia, who crashed out going through turn 14 early on this Grand Prix. That was the big moment. That was when Bez just made the mistake, trying to keep Marc behind him, which is not an easy task at all. The toughest task in MotoGP these days, when all you're seeing on your pit board through lap after lap after lap is the gap +0 to 93. That was the onboard with Bez.
Yeah. Almost heard Bez under his helmet saying, please stop. It finally did stop, but not in time to keep Marc Marquez behind. He is doing a very good job here, Bez, to be fair to him, of staying with the 93. The gap hasn't grown since Bezzecchi went wide at Quercia a couple of laps ago. And I guess more importantly for Bezzecchi, he's not coming under any further pressure yet from Alex Marquez.
No, Alex still stuck a second behind Bez. There's the message to Marc. +0.6, which is bang on the money. The message from the Ducati Lenovo team. And it looks like he's just threatening a little bit of a break here into the second half of this Grand Prix. Bezzecchi just looks like he's maybe struggling to hang on to Marc's pace at this juncture. Further back, Quartararo is still 4th and doing a phenomenal job of keeping Morbidelli at bay. Of course, the 2 former factory Yamaha colleagues. Gian Antonio is 6th, Aldeguer 7th, Marini and Oliveira and Binder are in the top 10. At the moment, if you're upright here in Mazzano, you're going to be scoring a point.
Is Morbidelli finally going to get the move done on Fabio Quartararo? It looks like he might on the inside into Quercia corner. Quartararo desperately trying to tip it in, but the VR46 Ducati was firmly in his way. And after trying for half the Grand Prix to crack the nut of the factory Yamaha, Morbidelli looks like he's finally done it.
Tough old nut to crack as well, isn't he? Quartararo. Resistance, though, unfortunately, on the Yamaha once again has proven futile. And now he's got another VR46 Ducati to contend with as well, because the Gian Antonio is all of a sudden starting to claw back some ground on the factory Yamaha.
Marquez was just off the road coming through turns 11 and 12. He's lost half of his advantage through the third sector. Definitely looked from the onboard, top left of the screen, as if he was out onto the green through there. So even Marquez is not in a comfortable situation here leading the Grand Prix, and it's just keeping Bezzecchi interested.
Yeah, he's got a track limit this morning, so he was clearly off the track at sector 3. Just a little bit of a jolt just to his brain, just to say, like, you know, it's not a given, this one. Keep the focus, keep the concentration. And he has got to be perfect now. There are remaining 9 laps or so here, 12 laps to go. 15 of 27 completed. Yeah, just something to keep the mind sharp.
I mean, those right-handers have been a bit of a sore spot for Marc Marquez this weekend. On Friday, as strong as he undoubtedly was, he was still having some problems through Curvone. Of course, the VR46 riders, of which Bezzecchi, of course, is one of them from the academy, they know this circuit so well. They're often so strong through those fast right-handers. And Marc Marquez had to really work hard at it on Friday to figure out the fastest way through there. And even at this late stage of the weekend, he's not exactly perfect through the fast right-handers of Sector 3.
Fabio versus Fabio at the moment, building for 5th place. Having lost 4th to Morbidelli, we can clearly see as the Gian Antonio's on the green coming through 12th. Morbidelli's been able to instantly gap Quartararo. Bez has jumped all over the back of Marc, hasn't he, here? Well, this is very much game on here in Mazzano. Through the Mazzano corner we go. This is turn 16. Over the line, Marc Marquez flies in a 132.2. Bez 2/10 faster in 2nd place.
Well, Aprilia will be absolutely loving this. They must have thought like us that once Marc Marquez took the lead, that might be the end of the story. You saw Massimo Rivolo with the calm down gesture with his hands. I think they're thinking to ourselves, hey, 20 points in 2nd place at this stage would still be a great result. Marc Marquez ever so slightly wide, but he's able to square it off and get a good run through 5. But he is not shaking off Marco Bezzecchi as easy as we might have thought when Bez steamed in hot into Quercia.
Yeah, there's so much at stake here as far as Bezzecchi's concerned. He knows that he's going to be closing in on Bagnaia in 3rd place in the championship, but he wants to complete what would be a fairy tale home round. Pole position, a sprint win and a Grand Prix win in his backyard here in Mazzano. Well, it wouldn't get much better than that, would it, as far as Marco Bezzecchi is concerned? It would be arguably the best weekend of his Grand Prix career. And he's building this pressure on Marc. Here we go. They just slightly roll the throttle through the high-speed Curvone. Turn 11. Fortune favouring the Brave through there as you're about 280 kilometres an hour at tipping. Yeah, this is not a given at all, isn't it? As once again, Bez closes up on the brakes now into 14. We'll flick it left through 15 where Marc dumped it in the sprint ahead of Bez yesterday.
Maybe this is the best way to keep Marc Marquez's focus and stop him from getting a little overconfident as he did yesterday. It almost looked like there might be some tears in the eyes there of Pecco Bagnaia, and you can hardly blame him through the troubles he's suffered from throughout this 2025 season. And I'm sure, even though he is in factory Ducati colours, the only thing that might cheer him up at this stage is to see his best mate Bez take victory.
He's lost. He is completely lost, isn't he, at the moment? Pecco Bagnaia lost in a mounting number of problems on that factory Ducati, and the issue is as well that the major concern as far as Pecco is concerned, he doesn't seem to have any obvious or clear answers as to why he's struggling so much. That's a big issue. As once again Bezzecchi, all that rear tyre was in the air there as he was grabbing the brake going into turn 8. He's giving Marc a run for his money here in Mazzano. 5-time winner in MotoGP already in his career here in San Marino is Marc Marquez. And he's only done more winning in MotoGP around his beloved Sachsenring, Aragon and Austin. Of course, anti-clockwise tracks where we know he loves. This has been by far Mark's best clockwise track in MotoGP. But it's all on here to resist Bez.
Aldeguer has just passed Quartararo on the Gresini Ducati into 6th place now. Marini also through on Quartararo, so the Yamaha now drops behind the Honda. So having started from the front row of the grid, the 2021 world champion who clinched it right here, Amazano, is starting to plummet down the order.
Yeah, you just wonder, having kept himself in that 4th place for so long, how much Quartararo has chewed up that Michelin rubber underneath him. Back in 8th place now. But maybe not guaranteed to be top Yamaha in this Grand Prix. So Quartararo then now with a 1:33.4. He was a second slower than Marino on that last lap, 1.4 seconds slower than Aldeguer. Don't know if something happened to the Frenchman on that lap 18. Fast forward to lap 19 though, and keeping the Italian fans on the edge of their seats, gnawing the old fingernails. There's this battle between 93 and 72 once again. This is a replay further back. Yeah, Quartararo, you can see his right foot off the peg there as Gian Antonio powered through on the VR46 Ducati. And then Aldeguer also able to use the poke of the GP24 to get the drive out of 6, carry the momentum through 7 and pass on the brakes into 8. And that's a bold-eyed move. That's some track knowledge coming into play there, isn't it, as far as Luca Marini's concerned. Making a move on the inside of Quartararo going into Cavone. Only a rider who's an expert around Mazzano would know that you can make that one pay off.
Quartararo, to make matters worse for him, has now been given a track limits warning too. I don't think he'll be necessarily thinking about that too much. He'll be trying to just stop the bleeding, I guess, at this stage of the Grand Prix and not allow himself to fall further back down the order. He needs to get himself back into the 32s from the 33s he's been lapping in quite recently. Is Marc Marquez just starting to stretch back out his advantage? A 31.7 for Marc Marquez. Bezzecchi a 31.8 though, so only a 10 slower as he now gets a track limits warning.
Yeah, Mark's already on one, so too then now is Bez. 8 laps remaining here in Mazzano. What has Bez got left? Is there anything he can do to put pressure on Mark? Well, he's putting pressure on Mark, because you could see there was a bit of a wobble, a bit of a move on that front tyre as Mark braked into turn 4. Out of 6 we go, and then accelerate. About 300 kilometres an hour you hit just under that Red Bull banner, the Red Bull bridge, into turn 8, which is where Bez surrendered the lead. On a good 6 or 7 laps to go now. I have to say he's able to get close to Mark without ever getting close enough to really threaten to throw that Aprilia on the inside. It's one thing to run the pace of Mark, it's one thing to sort of get on his rear tyre. Passing him, well, that is a whole different ball game.
We've often seen this season, the later into the race we get, with the tyre beginning to wear away, the best grip no longer available to you, Marc Marquez is able to hold the pace that no one, frankly, is bet. Once again, just closes it slightly through the right-handers of 11, 12 and 13, and that Ducati suddenly becomes a much bigger speck on our screen than it was when they came out of Tremonto. Bezzecchi just trying his level best to apply whatever pressure he can onto a rider who's not exactly afraid of taking victories.
Hoy Martin, of course, having completed his 2 long laps, having had to start from pit lane in the warm lap, he's down in 13th place, just a bit of data gathering and seat time on that RSGP, which has been so sadly lacking throughout much of 2025, so he's in 13th spot. Oliveira's having a real strong run, isn't he, on the Prima Pramac Yamaha. He's in 9th. That might be as good as it gets as far as the Portuguese star is concerned. He's 1.6 seconds behind Quartararo, and their pace is pretty much on par.
Yeah, Quartararo has now got back into the 32s, which he had to if he wanted to hold on to that 8th place. Everyone ahead of him, with the exception of Marini, is doing 31s, and credit to Bez. He responded with a 31.4 in the last lap, a 10th quicker than Marquez was going.
Yeah, if he does go on to complete Grand Prix win number 11 this year, there aren't going to be too many previously in 2025 where Marc Marquez has had to work this hard for it. But he really is being pushed to the absolute limit by Bez in 2nd place. Through the fast right-handers we go. Marquez, well, we know he's always talked about the fast rights, certainly not the strongest weapon in his considerable arsenal. As we now go into Caro, turn 14. This is where Bagnaia tipped off the factory Ducati in the first third of this Grand Prix. More misery for Bagnaia. It's been a very, very lonely third place, hasn't it, as far as Alex is concerned. He got dropped quite early on by both Bez and Mark. I think there was a bit of a head shake there, wasn't there, at that final corner from Bez. It coincided with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix from Mark, a 1:31.386. Well, we said this was his territory. This is his domain on well-worn Michelin rubber. This is where Mark comes into his own, and that is a statement, lap 21.
He's just raining punch after punch at Marco Bezzecchi and just waiting for the towel to finally come in. Bezzecchi has kept this going for 21 laps, 6 more to go. Does he have any answer now to this explosion of pace from Marquez, showing exactly why he's a round away potentially from being crowned world champion?
Do you know what? It looks like he has. He's putting up an almighty fight here, isn't he, Bezzecchi? This has been not just one of his better rides on the factory of Aprilia, one of the better rides of his MotoGP career. To go toe-to-toe with Marc Marquez, who's honing in here on a 6 Misano MotoGP success. Over half a second, though, now is the gap between the two of them. Looking on rather pensively. The classic blue Gigi Dall'Igna shot, the stroking of the grey goatee. He knows that Mark hasn't tended too often this year to blow it. He did there yesterday in the sprint at turn 15. You always got the impression, listening to the comments of Mark and seeing him speak to the media last night, that today was all about revenge. Today was all about score settling with this Misano circuit, because, okay, yeah, he's won sprints for fun so far this year, but he did not want to see that golden run of victories ended with one of his own mistakes, as it did. So, yeah, this is payback and some coming.
Well, Silverstone's the only weekend this season where he hasn't taken either of the 2 victories in a weekend, so he doesn't want to add San Marino to that as they exchange 131.4s. The towel has virtually come in the 73 camp now. Alex Marquez is settling for 3rd place. He's now back in the 132s. He's nearly, well, he's not even just in the back of the picture there. The best part now of 4 seconds off the lead.
The Gian Antonio's got a good late race pace, as we've seen from him so often in 2025. With Mark and with Bez, he's the only other rider that's got into the 31s. Personal best lap from Digia on that lap 22. 1:31.723. I think it's all too little too late in terms of him winning the inter-team battle with Frankie Morbidelli once again. He's 1.3 seconds behind Frankie with, what, 4.5 laps to go.
It's just stretching out again on this lap. 0.6 of a second now, the advantage for Marc Marquez, who I think is putting in another big lap here. Bezzecchi is just going to make sure that he can see the 93 when he goes over the line, just to make a point of how hard he's pushed him here this afternoon. 4 more laps to go when they complete this one, and they're a corner away from completing it. And Marc Marquez is now romping clear to yet another victory. A 1:31.479. It's only a 10th quicker than Bez, but at this stage of the Grand Prix, that's a lot.
He has had to ride out of his skin the 93 to break Bez here in Misano. Trying to recall really a Grand Prix where he was pushed as hard as this for the win, Mark. Here we go then into turns 4 and 5. Enormous amount of credit has to go to Bezzecchi here. Well, we've got now all of our top 3 on track limits warnings, because Alex joins that particular club.
Yeah, Marino's the only rider in the top 7 who doesn't have one at this stage. This is a rather lonely ride to P3 for Alex Marquez. But in terms of his overall World Championship aspirations this season, because his battle really is for 2nd now, with Marc Marquez now just a round away from wrapping the championship up, this is going to once again put another major dent into the hopes of anyone behind him catching him. Bagnaia was already 77 points behind Alex Marquez when this race began. That's going to go up to 93.
Don't forget, as always, of course, vote for your rider of the race. Go on the website or use the QR code there in the bottom left-hand, right-hand corner of your screens. Who's it going to be? Will it be Bezzecchi, who is going all in for the win here? Marco Bezzecchi, take a bow. This has been sung. What, lap 24 it is of 27, through turn 16 we go. Marc Marquez, the message loud and clear, a plus 0.3, and Marco Bezzecchi Absolutely phenomenal. He's digging deep here, isn't he? And some 131.357 from Bears on that lap 24. Fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Mark just cannot shake him off.
Yeah, and he's trying to shake him off. He'll be wafting his hand, surely saying, just get away, will you? I'm putting in mid-31s, and Marco Bezzecchi will not wilt. He is keeping this one alive, and the crowd will be warming to this. If fan power is enough to power Ryder to victory, you might as well give Bezzecchi the 25 points now. But Marc Marquez is just doing his level best, and he is the best in the business to keep Bez at bay.
Oh, Bez, so hard as he dared squeeze that front brake into turn 8. It's a fine line, isn't it, between hero and zero. He's right on that fine line at the moment as he continues to hunt down Mark. Out of Tremonto we go. That was a strong second sector, wasn't it, by Mark? I just wonder where that little moment that Bez had on the front end going into 8 just cost him that little bit of vital time. We're building up to the final couple of laps here in Misano. Into turn 14 we go. About half a dozen bike lengths between Mark and Bezzecchi.
So much credit to Bez, but so much credit to Aprilia too for the progress they've made with this bike. It has come on leaps and bounds from the start of the season, and Bezzecchi has to take an awful lot of the credit for that. We now start the ultimate lap. Bezzecchi set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Marc Marquez responds with one of his own.
That's how you respond. That is the sign of great champions and great riders. When you're under immense pressure, you always just have that extra gear. You find something else. He needs it, though. He needs a 131.2 just to keep Bezzecchi at bay. But towards the back end of this Grand Prix, these two have been absolutely phenomenal. They have been on a completely different plane to everybody else. Punch to punch, toe to toe, exchanging fastest laps to the Grand Prix for fun at the back end of this race. Just shows the talent of these pair.
Marc Marquez has been driven to a place in this Grand Prix I don't think he expected he'd have to go to just to shake this Aprilia off. Well, he hasn't shaken him off. He's just keeping him at bay at the moment. And Marc Marquez is putting in some extraordinarily quick laps. A 131.290. That's faster than a few riders went in qualifying yesterday. Extraordinary late race pace. They dropped Alex Marquez to the tune of nearly 6 seconds now. That just shows you what kind of level this pair have been on today.
And a shout out as well to Gian Antonio once again. A 131.6 from Digia. He's got really strong late race pace as well. There is one lap and one corner remaining then here in this Grand Prix of San Marino. We go left through the Misano turn on board with Bez. The final lap will start with Mark 4/10 clear of Bez, who once again, well, this is the kitchen sink and everything else he's got, isn't it, that he's launching at Mark right now. A 131.311 on that penultimate lap was Bez's fastest of the Grand Prix. There's nothing else he can do. He has given everything. He has given his all here. Is he just going to come up that little bit too short? You have to say it's been a masterclass in resisting pressure from Mark if he is going to win this San Marino Grand Prix. It's not over just yet, though.
Shades of acid in many respects, where Marc Marquez did practically the entire Grand Prix with Marco Bezzecchi right behind him. Marc Marquez into Quaisha corner, where he inherited the lead from Marco Bezzecchi. Bezzecchi inherited a sprint win yesterday when Marc Marquez crashed ahead of him. It's going to take something like that for the Aprilia star to pull this one off.
Well, this is how you silence some of his very public critics here in Misano. Marc Marquez, he said, I always do my talking on the track. That's where it really mattered. It looks like he is going to close out this victory here in the Red Bull Grand Prix of San Marino. 2 weeks away, surely, from closing out his 7th MotoGP World Championship. What a fight, and what a warrior Marco Bezzecchi has been for Aprilia in this Grand Prix. He is going to come up just that little bit short as Marc Marquez comes through the final corner. It has been another Misano masterclass from Mark. He takes the checker flag, just over half a second clear of Bezzecchi. That is revenge. That is payback for his exit when leading the sprint yesterday. It is a very lonely and distant third place for Alex, as Italian tennis star Lorenzo Moretti waves the checker flag. Frankie Morbidelli is fourth ahead of Fabio Di Gianantonio. Digia himself was really strong at the end of that Grand Prix. Aldeguer is sixth. Another top 10, another brilliant ride by Marini, head of Quartararo, Oliveira and Binder. Great ride by Miguel Oliveira. We haven't got all our points going finished over the line just yet. Jorge Martin 13th after a dramatic race day for him. But lightning does strike twice, doesn't it, for Mark and Alex? Last weekend in Barcelona, it was Alex that crashed out the lead in the sprint before he rebounded brilliantly to win the Grand Prix. This time around, it's the turn of Mark, crashing out the lead in the sprint yesterday, and now he wins the Grand Prix. And to boot, he sets a new point-scoring record in the MotoGP World Championship. Jorge Martin last year was crowned world champion with 507 points. There's still 6 rounds to go. Mark has already bettered that benchmark. What a race. Two riders at the top of their game, delivering such a thrilling fight.
They delivered punch after punch. In the end, it was Marc Marquez who won on points today. And in 2 weeks' time, at the Japanese Grand Prix, he does have his first opportunity to take the World Championship, a World Championship that he hasn't won since 2019. He gets a match point at the Japanese Grand Prix at Motegi, where, of course, he has won 3 previous world titles.
And as you saw there on the graphic, comeback loading, that's the hashtag as far as the 93 is concerned. It is going to be one of the greatest comebacks in global sport, not just in motorcycle racing. He's done it again. He's done it once again here in Italy as well. Let's get the thoughts of Davide Tardozzi as with Jack.
Davide, just a brilliant ride from Mark, but how much credit do you have to give Marco Bezzecchi as well? He really pushed Mark today.
Oh, Mark did a fantastic race. I think those 2 riders today makes a history race because they was incredibly fast, and lapping like they did in the last couple of laps was something amazing.
But the T-shirts ready for Japan in 2 weeks' time?
Oh, yeah.
Enjoy.
You bet they have. Thanks very much, Jack. Thanks to Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi. Marc Marquez then about to complete a journey. At times in the past he thought he might never complete. Who was that going the wrong way on the circuit? Was that Jack Miller?
Like Jack Miller.
Where's
on the
Jack Miller going?
Travagliano going the wrong way down the back straight.
I thought my eyes were deceiving me. I was like, what's
He is
going on?
popular around these parts as a former Ducati rider, so maybe he's saying hello to someone special. Yeah, Marc Marquez cannot win the championship in the sprint. There's your confirmation. Even if he wins the sprint and Alex Marquez scores nothing, it will go to Sunday at Motegi. But after clinching world championships there in 2014, in 2016, and of course in 2018 as well, Marc Marquez could add 2025 to his list of glory days in Japan.
On those occasions, of course, he was the figurehead, the superstar at Honda. How much will it hurt for Honda to see in their own backyard? Honda own the mobility resort Motegi, to see their former star, Marc Marquez, the comeback king in many ways. Well, what a ride. What an absolutely outstanding performance that was by Marco Bezzecchi. Let's get the thoughts of, I'm sure, a very proud Aprilia boss, Paolo Bonora, Vijay.
Paolo, it's not the victory that I'm sure you all desperately wanted, but that was some performance by Marco.
Absolutely. Great, a wonderful race by Marco for sure, and was absolutely strong.
Yeah.
It is. We know that it will be difficult, but it was difficult. But he put all his energy, all his effort, and to be honest, we are very happy about him.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, they could not have asked for anything more from Marco Bezzecchi in that 27-lap race. There's the maths. Marc Marquez will be a world champion if he outscores Alex by 3 points over the course of Chapter 17 in 2 weeks' time. So many emotions for our top 2 in that Grand Prix. Relief as far as Mark's concerned, I'm sure, having avenged his sprint crash yesterday. Showing some Italian fans just who is the current boss of MotoGP. And Marco Bezzecchi, well, not the win that he so desperately wanted, that he so desperately craved, but what a fight he put up as he takes the congratulations of the Bez fan club. Yeah, I'm sure he's probably a little bit overcome with emotion, Marco Bezzecchi. I'm not really sure what else he could have done to have tried to have won that home Grand Prix.
I don't think we've ever seen him ride as well as that, have we, in MotoGP?
Only Pecco Bagnaia and Casey Stoner then now have won more Grand Prix for Ducati. Win number 14 for Marc Marquez ties him level now with Andrea Dovizioso. Not a good day at all once again as far as Bagnaia is concerned. Yeah, there is the love heart sign. He wins in red for the first time in Misano. He's completed a Ducati double here in Italy this year. Victorious, of course, in Mugello. Victorious today here in Misano. Gian Antonio, well, we saw how strong his late race pace was as well. Maybe not on par with Marc and Bez, not too far behind here. A very hard-earned fifth. And finally, some big points and a solid and strong ride on a Sunday for Gian Antonio. On Sundays, he'd scored just a point since Assen a long time ago, pre-summer break. So a welcome return to a top finish on a Sunday for Digia.
Well, the cheers and the air horns that you can hear are all for one man at the moment. Marc Marquez is the winner of the San Marino Grand Prix. Well, the winner in the hearts of so many here, over 90,000 of them at Misano today, is Marco Bezzecchi. Frankie Morbidelli, after being pipped to a sprint podium yesterday by his teammate Gian Antonio, this time it was Frankie who won the all VR46 tussle, coming home just under a second ahead of Digia.
Yeah, even Stevens then in VR46 this weekend, 1-1. A draw between Digia and Morbidelli. Good ride that by Frankie. He has reeled off a succession of top 6 finishes throughout the season. Never really looked like he was going to be in contention for the podium. As Marco Bezzecchi is going to get a rapturous reception from his home crowd, and in particular from his factory Aprilia crew, because, well, it was one of the best rides of his career, let alone one of his best rides in MotoGP. That's a nice gesture as well from Aprilia. Looks like they've let in his Olin suspension technician and Vicky, who are part of the Aprilia media team as well, to be the welcoming party, the meet and greet crew for Bez in Parc Ferme. Oh, very nice gesture indeed.
Marc Marquez there getting the cooling vest on to get his body temperature down. Of course, he'll have lost a kilo or two over the course of that Grand Prix. And boy, did Marco Bezzecchi keep him sweating too late in that Grand Prix. Of course, they've not always seen eye to eye, it's fair to say, Marc Marquez and Marco Bezzecchi over their respective careers. But Marc Marquez surely will have nothing but respect and admiration for how hard Bez pushed him today.
Yeah, that's a nice little embrace down in Parc Ferme. Marc Marquez just saying to Marco, you just did not give up. He was like a red rag to a bull, a red Ducati ahead of him. That's Marc Marquez's 73rd Premier Class victory. Can't be too many he's had to work that hard for. It's another strong weekend for his brother Alex. 2 home podiums here for Gresini Racing. Let's get his thoughts for Jack.
Alex, another strong weekend, a double podium here in Misano. Just how special is it to take this special livery here on a special weekend for Gresini onto the podium?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy to be today on the podium. Our P3 was the maximum. Yesterday I said it, and today was like this. They have something more during all the weekend, so we did a really good job. And now we need to keep working like this. In Misano, that is not a track that suits super good to my riding style. We were able to be there. So, yeah, honor to put this livery on the podium. I mean, it was one of my dreams to be on the podium with this livery here.